It asked them to pick up some pantyhose, so they do that. So they put the two products together and the sales of both went up. So those are just simple examples of, thinking about how you're going to use the data. Other question? Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the culture change. These guys are talking about the culture change internally to get an innovative environment. But if you look further up the supply chain, just as you were talking about those small incremental changes, quite often suppliers are saying, why are they asking me to deliver this? It's the wrong thing. They need something else, but we train them very well as clients to do what we tell them to do. How do we get them to tell us what we need?
Started with this program, we engaged our suppliers as well, and they were the first people that we actually engaged. And when we run these big sessions, there is a whole supplier alliance group that gets those suppliers in-house. We have 300 suppliers, and I think that over the last, say, 3 months, about 100 of them would have been engaged in running these sort of sessions. You don't have to be face-to-face, because most of our suppliers are overseas as well. But there is a way of doing this with them in a collaborative environment that relies on telephone conferencing and all of that. So they are engaged. And what we're doing now is how do we co-create with our customers as well. And so our recipients, through this process, are telling us incredible things that we didn't actually know about our products, simple things that we can change that can represent a massive impact to, to the performance of the products and the services that we provide them. But absolutely, it's a very important imperative for us.
And also on our side, we created a co-lab, which is we've got all our suppliers, our key suppliers, actually around a problem. So we actually defined a number of business problems across our value chain. And actually, I said to them, "Well, could you help solve this?" And for us, it wasn't so much. It's the ideas. It was just a flood of ideas, which was fantastic. But now the problem we've got is how do we actually implement those ideas? It was a very valuable exercise, but it's almost we need people. We're flush with ideas, but we're not flush with the implementation of those ideas. So that was one example, and then also around human-centered design, how we've actually now engaged our consumer and customer and shopper into co-creating some of the innovations in a co-creation environment. So that's another way in which we've absolutely partnered beyond the internal walls of the organisation. Yeah.
It becomes part of that concept of open innovation, using sources outside your company to innovate, and obviously your suppliers are one of the first groups that you look at. I think European companies are further ahead than we are in that respect. Philips, for example, has been practicing open innovation for many years and has now actually opened up its whole lab and turned its laboratory space into an open innovation hub for other companies. Yes, at the back.
Do you actually use innovative technology in order to elicit a more sort of comprehensive response from your focus groups? So are you using virtual reality, neurophysiological assessments, eye tracking, etc.? And Rod, how do you actually integrate the benefit of the peak metrics in the incentive schemes of your organization from the managerial accounting perspective? Thank you.
So you innovative technologies such as virtual reality, etc., in your understanding of the customer. And the second had to do with how do you get some of the benefits to the employees as an incentive. Is that paraphrase?
We developed a tool called PICOS, which is Picture of Success, for our sales team. And actually using virtual reality, we actually sit and we actually create what a planogram or a shop frontage could look like for a retailer. And so they will effectively experience what that looks like in real time. So it's often much easier to do the sales pitch and the convincing if they can actually see, touch and feel it. One example, but I wouldn't say it's an area that we're very active in. I'd say sometimes it's as simple as writing it on a post-it note, and actually getting the voice of customer, talking to the truck drivers, talking to the consumers, and in a very old-fashioned way, actually using your plain common sense to identify that. But certainly technologies like AR. AI is the other big one for us as well, so artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence is another area that we're focused on.
Incentives for employees as well?
Yeah, so I just remembered an example that happened 3 days ago with a supplier. The supplier said in the meeting when we ran this session, he said, "I've been trying to tell you this for the last 10 years. We cut the batch size for silicon molding in half, and that gave us a 2% increase in yield, which converts to about $30,000 a week." And it was a 20-minute conversation. I thought I'd close that with the suppliers because it's incredible what you can get out of that. On the incentive thing, again, I'll be a little bit controversial, but you get to keep your job, right? So look, no, I'm serious. I mean, this is not about giving people medals for thinking about ideas that make their workplace better or that make the products that they make better. It is a responsibility. So everyone in my organization has a dual responsibility. So, for example, if you are an electronic assembler and you assemble components, that's responsibility number one. But equally important is the responsibility to contribute to everyday improvement. We don't call it continuous improvement because continuous doesn't mean a lot. Every day is better. It's more tangible. It's every day, literally every day. And so they understand that that is their responsibility, okay? Now, we do celebrate, and so what happens is they love taking photos, like when they run the peak session, they like to take photos. With the Enoma has been around to see Cochlear in Macquarie University, and they love to take photos of them with the post-it notes. And then they also like when we talk about what they've been able to do as a team in the public forums that I have with the team members. So sometimes I have up to, I don't know, 6 or 7 meetings with big groups, and I put photos, just photos of them working and doing things that are enticing and that are challenging, and that to them is more important, I think, than giving them extra money for that. The moment you start giving people extrinsic rewards for innovation, you're basically creating a separation between the day-to-day job and innovation, and this is what I'm saying, be very careful with that. It's not anything over-dramatized and special. It's your responsibility. It's an everyday thing.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. I think we have time for maybe one more question. If you have to go, so feel free to go.
No, I'm going to come with you.
Okay. Any other? We don't want to discourage that. Yes. Let's see. Is there any?
Are innovation guaranteed to growth in top line? If not, when organizations should decide when to innovate and optimize the existing process? So why I'm saying, because if we look at the previous scenario before the Facebook is starting, like Orchid went down. Another one related to my research. So I found that DHL, it's a logistics service provider, they have around 200 patents on their name, and they are number 1 in the revenue. And UPS, they have more than 300 patents in their name, but they are at the level 11.
Certainly there's no correlation between ownership of patents and success in innovation. If you look at the companies, and there's also no correlation between spending on R&D and innovation. Obviously spending is relevant, but there's not a good correlation. But does anybody like to comment further on that, on the particular point about the process? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. That's good. Look, I'm going to give you more of a personal opinion from a young person. But no, I think it is important. I really do. I believe with innovation, sometimes we lose, and it goes back to what we were saying, hearing from Cochlear, is what is innovation? To me, it's about ownership. I think with a company, it's how much do you own it? You know, like for the people with the trucks, they own that technology, the pioneers. It's that culture of ownership of what you have drives the company. So whether entrepreneurial companies that really disrupt a market, it's about ownership. But I think it also comes to, you cannot lax on that culture. In the market, it changes rapidly. I mean, as I mentioned before, AME is a medium-sized consulting financial firm. All of a sudden, we seize 30% market share. It is not by relaxing. It can't relax. And you'll look at all these companies who do relax. I mean, look, classic example, Kodak. You know, at the time they were the pioneer. I remember learning that in my MBA. It was the same thing, and it's a common theme that we see in terms of adaptation of technology, your supply chains. And it was interesting when you talked about the other question about the product, supply chain. You wouldn't think that for commodities and ownership. So one thing the Australian industry has always been ahead of everyone is not always on cost, is not on the product, it is the ownership of their product. So when we speak to the Chinese steel mills, and when I speak to Bao Steel, even now, and I do all the market updates, I mean, emissions, you know, it's a huge issue. this is the greatest opportunity for Australia. We have the cleanest coal. It is not a dead market. It is, and why is the coal price at record highs despite the renewables? Because there's a huge push for high quality coal. It is about changing how we innovate our product offering to the service. And what they do, these big companies in Australia, is we don't get a professional business development person to go out and spill. We get the person involved in the innovation, talk to the people, because as the world shifts to Asia, the most important thing is guaranteeing that trust of a long-term relationship. It is about having the people at the front of your innovation in that commercial space. I mean, you could have anyone who could talk about mining industry, but I can tell you if you go into Sumitomo or Mitsubishi, and when I meet the head of Mitsubishi Investments, he doesn't want to speak to those people. He wants to speak to someone who's involved. What are they doing? What's different? Why do I need this information? Why do I pay you X number of millions of dollars? And in my personal thing is, I feel as a generational change, going about young people, is this is what young people have to take ownership of, and companies as a whole. And it's the same thing as where businesses are being left behind, and our big established firms like not willing to adapt to that ownership. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Leonard. So we have to stop, unfortunately, at this time, and I just want to thank you all for coming to this session, and I particularly also want to thank our speakers. Norma is responsible for interacting with them and persuading them to come and speak, and Norma, you've done a wonderful job, and I think we'd all agree that we've had a very interesting few minutes with the speakers. I hope there'll be more opportunities to hear further from them. Please join me in thanking them for coming here.
And on behalf of POMS and Macquarie Graduate School Management, we'd like to offer our thanks. I think